Welcome to Sailing into Oblivion, the solo nonstop voyage of the Mighty Sparrow. So today we're going to go over the first ocean, which is the North Atlantic. And essentially on October 3rd, 2017, myself alone set sail on Mighty Sparrow, my West Sail 32, to sail all the way around the world without stopping and come back to Gloucester, Massachusetts. And if you watch the previous video, the end clip shows Sparrow sailing off into the horizon, and that's exactly what happened. So I took off, and essentially you have to head due east to get out into the Gulf Stream and then ride that down towards the equator, South Atlantic Ocean after that, into the Indian Ocean, across the Pacific, and then back up the Atlantics to home. And that's the intended route. It's what's also referred to as the clipper ship route, because before the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal, the great age of sailing, those ships had to go down into the Southern Ocean, brave the wild weather, and then make it back. So essentially, I took off and left on a pretty good breeze. It wasn't too bad. We had some ups and some downs, but when Sparrow is sailing, Sparrow is flying along. And with the help of the Gulf Stream, I was able to do between 6 and 8 knots, which is pretty fast in this old boat. And we made it out to the middle of the Atlantic pretty quickly. One of the big issues, though, that I was dealing with was the scope and the size of this challenge that I was taking on was really affecting me mentally. And to put it in perspective, it's as if the whole next year of your life is something that you can't stop thinking of, and it's terrifying, and you know there's going to be lots of trouble because you know where you're going and you still have to just get through your day. And for me, that was becoming very hard. And I found that the only way that I could cope with it mentally was to shrink down the scope and scale of the voyage from the whole entire world to just one ocean at a time. And so the North Atlantic was the first one, and I had sailed across that twice before. But as I got out to about the middle, because you have to make it pretty far east before you turn south, I ended up having a pretty close brush with Hurricane Ophelia. It crossed in front of me, and I ended up dipping south below it. But it was pretty windy and pretty rough out there for a couple of days, and I ended up actually doing some damage on Sparrow. I ripped a few winches off of the boom, had to repair those once I got to some calm waters. And after getting into that calm area, I remember thinking to myself, man, I'm pretty lucky that these breakdowns happened now and instead of in some major gale in the Southern Ocean. And so I pressed on, and I found the weather started to get pretty decent, and we cruised. And when Sparrow was just sailing along, 3 sails flying, pretty much across the wind, there's really nothing like it. And with my mind sort of working pretty well with the new objective of just getting across the one ocean, I was actually having fun. I was enjoying the sail, enjoying the world around me, the clouds, the sky, the stars, everything. It really was a turning point after about 2 or 3 weeks out there on the ocean. Now, as you approach Africa, you catch into the northeast trade winds, which blow pretty consistently. And so we flew down south and headed towards an area called the Doldrums. And the Doldrums are a pretty weird place. I think they're sort of sweet and sour for me because they're very hard to sail through when you're not using an engine, because there's either no wind or there's way too much wind. It can go from perfectly placid and flat and calm to all of a sudden 30 or 40 knot squalls with rain and thunder and lightning, and it gets pretty intense. But you sort of work your way through. You almost have to inchworm along to get past that. And usually you find the doldrums around 5 degrees north latitude, almost all the way down to the equator, where then it typically switches to the southeast trades. But I think my most memorable point in the North Atlantic part of this voyage was just about 5 or 6 days out from Gloucester. And it happened that we had some pretty good wind for a while, built up the seas. I was in the Gulf Stream, and then suddenly things just started calming down, and they calmed down really fast. And that evening, as the sea became almost perfectly flat, after being becalmed for a bit, the slightest breeze picked up, maybe 3 or 4 knots. And we just sort of were able to maintain this nice, gentle speed. The boat was really pretty much still. And as the night drew in, could almost barely even realize the boat was moving, but we were moving at about 3 or 4 knots. And as we were going, as it got darker, the phosphorescence started to really come out. So on the surface of the ocean, peeling off from the bow all the way to the stern, was this line of glowing green blue that was extending out into the ocean. And then all in the outer areas, it was just blinking on and off, these like boom, a pop of light, another pop of light, covering the whole surface of the sea. And as I'm taking this scene in and just enjoying how amazing the world is around me, up on the horizon, just this tiny little orange peak comes up, and I didn't know what it was at first. And then as it came up further and further, I realized it was the moon, and it was this orange color, and it started ripping up. And for just a few minutes before the light from the moon took over, we had the blue-green phosphorescence coming off the boat. We're silently sailing through the water. The moon is slowly rising up with this ominous sort of look, and the world around me was just almost overwhelmingly beautiful. And as the moon crept up further, the phosphorescence disappeared. And then I had a nice sort of half moon or quarter moon night to just enjoy and reflect on exactly why I was out there. And I think that was one of the first times where I sort of sat there and really probably said out loud, boy, I sure am glad to be on this adventure. And from that point on, I do remember making some guidelines. And I said to myself, okay, if I'm only going to consider a small portion of the trip in front of me, always knowing that I'm still going to go around the world, I'm also not going to delve into the past and waste my time here in the present by just sitting down and trying to like go over all the things that I've done in my life. Not that I've had some crazy life by any means, but I just didn't want to miss what was going on in the present. And that was sort of the mindset that I kept going with throughout the entire North Atlantic to get me down to the equator. And that was pretty much the first month and a half of the voyage, was going from Gloucester, getting to the South Atlantic, and then continuing on into the dangers that lie beyond. So that's the first episode of the trip around the world. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and there's definitely more to come. Thanks for watching.